Brings us to our next agenda item, which is the finance update. As we say always at all the staff meetings, it's of course the finances are our favorite updates always. So I'll welcome to the stage Malcom, our CFO, who will also be joined by Andy. So welcome.
Thanks, Narani. Apologise for my rather unsteady feet. Kneecapping exiting CFOs isn't a requirement. Just I did fall over, so a little bit unsteady on my feet. Right, see if after 7 years I can get this thing to operate. Hey. We sent out the statutory accounts as we normally do about 3 weeks before this meeting. Just to give you some idea of the process, our audit is carried out by Price Bailey during February and it's completed by the end of March. Thankfully, as in every year so far, there's been no significant issues identified, and except for a reduction in the tax provision, the results are roughly in line with our management accounts. But I think on the tax, where there is a fairly significant difference with our growing overseas activities, our tax position is getting more complicated, and we're now engaged with Ernst & Young in advising us the best way to organise our new business streams. That includes looking at local tax, withholding tax, transfer pricing and overseas VAT, subjects we haven't really had to have much involvement with in the past. So, if we look at our statutory accounts for 2023 compared with 2022, we're seeing a 13% growth in turnover. Main elements of that on the positive side are colo and 100 gig services, which is partly offset by lower than expected 400 gig. Just as a point of comparison, obviously we're encouraging members to take the 400 gig, but because of the pricing, if like a delay in that happening, in fact means that we get more per gig on 100 gig than we do on 400. On the downside also was that 10 gig hasn't gone as well as we expected this year, with demand falling. On the cost of sales, it has gone up quite a bit. Power charges and inflation had the impact that we thought it would, but not to the same extent. In fact, it was lower than we thought it would go up. With admin expenses, again, inflation hit us, but not as much as we expected. We're quite a bit less than budgeted, which we'll see on the next slide. And one of the factors was depreciation was about 0.2 million less than expected, primarily is because the capex happened later in the year than we expected. On the positive side, interest received was considerably higher than we expected, with interest rates rising. I don't think we're going to get the same sort of effect in the coming year. And to say on taxation, it's higher than we budgeted because of the effects of our overseas activities. So, how do we do against our budget? With turnover, we were slightly off. I said colo and 100 gig did a lot better than budget, but we did suffer a loss of 10 gig that we didn't really expect, and 400 gig was slower in starting off. With our admin expenses, we were lower than budget. Professional services were higher, but on the opposite side, staff costs were quite a bit lower, 0.3 million lower, and depreciation was 0.2 million lower. Interest receivable was 0.2 better. So in the end, we ended up with a small surplus against what we thought was going to be a small deficit. So pretty good result overall. Bearing in mind we are looking to be very close to break even. That's our our target with a small surplus for future investment. So, on to the balance sheet, which is as healthy as it has been for the last few years. Our current assets are higher than last year, cash being part of it. But also, we did have a large amount of debtors, particularly large member debtors that settled after the end of the year rather than before the end of the year. And similarly, on the creditor side, we had significant CapEx spend towards the end of the year that was paid in 2024. And on the CapEx, we spent 3 million, which is in line with our expectations. So that sort of summarises 2023. Now, the plan of attack is that Andy will look at the first quarter of 2024, and say the double act is, it's not intended to be little and large, but this is where it seems a bit that way. But I don't know whether anyone's got any questions on 2023 before I hand over to Andy. Yeah. Okay, I will now hand over to Andy.
Thank you. Before I tell you about what's happening this year, just want to do a big thank you to Malcom for all his help on the transition. I've got a big task ahead because he's obviously been running a very successful finance team for many years here. And so thanks again for all your support in the transition.
Thanks, Andy.
For those of you who don't know me, I have been a CFO of a couple of other companies for about 23 years, and I guess my focus is working for technology companies and trying to increase recurring revenue, because if you have lots of predictable recurring revenue, the CFO can sleep at night. So just in terms of, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail this year, but just to say Q1 is going very well. We're slightly behind budget on revenue, but everything else at the bottom line is absolutely spot on, and that's credit to the finance team and Malcom for setting a very good budget. What I would say, though, is that you know, the progress from last year is continuing with you know, more than double-digit revenue growth. So onwards and upwards, and that's all from me, unless there's any questions. Thank you for not asking me awkward questions.
Okay, I'd just like to say a few closing words. This is my last time on stage. Wow, almost 8 years. I think one of my most memorable first meetings at LINX was with John, the CEO, who said to me, I didn't really want a CFO, which I thought wasn't very welcoming. But over the years, we in fact came up with a very close working relationship, and it's been good. Obviously, there's been quite a bit of activity on the membership list recently regarding my departure, and I think enough said on that. I don't believe it's been well managed, but the commitment to look at governance over the future similar circumstances is very welcome. So except for the last few weeks, I've very much enjoyed working with LINX, and I wish my super colleagues and the company every success in the future. Thank you.
So when Malcom described his first interaction with joining as CFO, I joined just before Malcom did. And I think the term at the moment was that LINX wasn't a finance-heavy company. I suspect Malcom in his first year might not necessarily have shared that view, but I think Malcom did a tremendous effort as the first dedicated CFO of LINX and building up I think a finance team and I was going to say building up finances. We did have finances before, but maybe not to the standard that we had expected, and certainly not what we have today. And that's all down to a lot of work Malcom has done. And I think sometimes I have been, we have been dealing a lot with finances together. We have been digging into numbers, and I think we have had enjoyable discussions about the pros and cons of this and how to deal with and put in place things that hasn't existed before. Malcolm mentioned the work on taxation and other things that has grown with LINX and the finance team over the years, and I think this is not a place we necessarily started in. I think that's grown through the years, and very much to Malcolm. Malcolm has had another unique feature in the office is Malcolm has always added a lot of positivity to the office, and that's partly helped by his constant walking around with a tin of biscuits that I think has generally helped all of us keep our cheerful mood. And
It's only bribery.
it's only bribery, but anyway, certainly a word to me. So Malcolm has a very positive effect on LINX. So we're going to be thanking Malcolm a lot throughout the coming month. We have lots of things and some surprises planned for him. But this is more the public version saying thank you for the years at LINX. You're going to get a first gift now, some later. But anyway,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you.